y'all once again for tuning into my podcast, Real Talk About Life and Relationships, with me, your coach and host, Stephanie K. I am a multi certified and master life and relationship coach and also an author. And today I want to continue to dive into the series that I've been covering, which is about love. And so I talked about what love is, how we love ourselves, how women express love in relationships, and now I'm diving into how men express love in relationships. And today I have a guest with me to help me hash this out because I am not a man and I don't like to assume things that I don't know about. I think we got a lot of people doing that nowadays, especially with social media. Everybody's an expert, but nobody studies anything and really gets to the nitty gritty. Well, not anybody, but you know. So I like to bring people in that from the perspectives of which I don't understand things, so that not only can I give you guys valuable information, but also learn something myself. And so the guest that I have with me today is Terrell. He will introduce himself in a minute. But before I get into that, I want to remind you guys that my show typically airs on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Weekly. You can watch me on Facebook, YouTube, also the Entertainment Theater app on the Google Play Store, Roku, and the Apple Store. But then you do have to download the Entertainment Theater app, and then you also find other independent creators doing their stuff on there as well. But yeah, so I think that's it. You can also visit my website at www.unveilingthespirit.com for more information about me, my coaching services, my free sessions, as well as past content that I've done so far. So today, like I said, I want to dive into what love is because I do think people have a lot of misconceptions about love, even when it comes to loving themselves, which is why I did a show about that. But again, I want to dive into this whole relationship aspect because this is a really big issue when it comes to relationships between men and women as well. And so, again, today I have my guest here, Terry Talks Terrell, which I'm not going to call you that the entire time we do the interview. But
Terry
go
is
ahead.
fine.
Okay. Terry, go ahead and introduce yourself and let everybody know what you do.
I am Terry Terrell. I go by Terry Talks on some of my platforms. I get that. That's my pseudonym I kind of go by because I like to have conversations and engage people. I am a therapist out of the Kansas area. I am a licensed master social worker of more than a decade, working with families, youth, adults, kids, helping families stay together, putting families back together, putting kids back into the home. I've worked so many different aspects of working with families, and so it was just an evolution of who I am as a helping being and change agent to kind of gravitate into the space as being a therapist. So I have my own practice here in the Kansas area. I stay full as a minority black male doing this thing, and I enjoy what I'm doing. I feel
Mm.
blessed.
Yeah, that's great. I
Thank you
really
for
like.
so thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. I thank you for coming on. And I will say that I've been around so many, I hate to say it, toxic masculinity type men for such a big portion of my life that is always refreshing for me to meet men like you that understand mental health, that's open to it, that doesn't look at it like ignore it or look at it like it's weak and stuff like that. So I really, really appreciate that. It encourages me, and I hope it encourages other women because a lot of times women do get it, and men as well, but women get into these stereotypes about men, how they are. And so I feel like men like you are break the mold. And so I really appreciate you coming on for that. So thank you. So let's get into the topic today, how men express love in relationships. I'm looking to learn some things too. So so before we I will give a little bit of an intro and then we can kind of dive into some questions. Is that
Mm-hmm.
I do think that men and women, the way they express love in relationships, sometimes is misunderstood. And so, especially when it comes to men who tend to be, not always, not as emotional as women. And so, a lot of times, their ways of expressing love kind of, I would say, not over either goes over women's heads, but also under their feet as well, because they just don't understand that that's how a man is expressing their love to them. And it's a lot of stuff now where people complaining online about women are not the same and women saying men are not the same. And I mean, it just seems like the divide between men and women is getting bigger and bigger. And so I wanted to bring somebody on and have a podcast that really talks about the real stuff that we go through when it comes to relationships, because I do think that they are a very, very important part of life. And so I want to offer people good knowledge to actually help them move towards the relationships that I think we all want. And so when it comes to men expressing love in relationships, what do you think is maybe one or two ways that men express love in relationships that you think sometimes women miss?
I think you made some very good points, but when you started that off is there's a lot of misunderstandings going on out there. There's a lot of toxic rhetoric both ways
Mm,
that people have kind of grabbed onto, and I think when you haven't had healthy relationships, you didn't grow up around that, then you kind of gravitate towards the things that have caused you pain. And then
mm,
you see everything through that lens. And
mm,
so we have a lot of people that are hurting that have not quite healed, that are grabbing on to these toxic personalities and this rhetoric out there, and they're duplicating that, and they're just spewing more of that out there. It's unfortunate.
yeah,
But that's why we have platforms such as yours that are here to have conversations about how we can be healthy, how we can first heal as individuals, and start
exactly.
talking about how we can get into a relationship that is also reflective of a healed state instead of kind of duplicating pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, so what do you think when it comes to relationships that men like? There's ways that men express love in relationships that you think women typically miss.
hmm So I think some ways that men express love. I think one of the key things that you have to understand is obviously we think differently.
Right.
Men are more logical thinkers. Women are more, the way that you guys think is a lot different, even the brain chemistry.
Mm,
You may talk about one subject. I laugh with some of my boys because if a guy's talking about a subject, we talk about that subject until we done talking about that subject. If my wife is talking about that subject, she's gonna talk about that subject. She's gonna talk about the person that she saw. Maybe she didn't like her or interaction, and then it reminds her of a place that she used to work with, and it reminds her she got this appointment tomorrow. And so the way that the mind operates, because a woman uses both sides of her mind. A man is usually right hemisphere part of his brain, so he's more logically thinking. So with that in mind, we obviously think and view things totally different, right? So the
mm,
way that men view love is also logical from a logical standpoint. And
mm,
so things are pretty cut and dry when you talk to us. So if you're speaking from an emotional standpoint, we're often going to miss those signs and those cues because we're problem solvers by nature. And so when you bring things to us, we're trying to figure out, how do we solve this? And you just
mm,
want to vent.
mm,
And so if we haven't had that conversation and we haven't established that I'm going to ask you what it is that you need from me, then you're going to come in wanting to vent to me, and I'm going to expect you to come in and be ready for the solution. So when I
mm.
give you the solution and then you get cut off and you don't get the vent the way that you want to, now we have an additional problem, right?
Right.
So but going back to your original question, what are some ways that men can express love in relationships? Again, I think men often show love by carving out undistracted time and moments for the person that they're with, right? And so spending free time with his partner. Acts of service is a really big thing for men, right?
Okay.
Because we have such a performative relationship with the world that we see things through, some of us see things, our value through the things that we do.
Okay.
So like a powerful demonstration comes from like doing meaningful things for your wife, girlfriend, or whatever. So if I build you a cabinet, I really put some time, energy, and love into that thing, and you see it and it's not the color you want, and you dismiss that, now we got a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you brought up some good stuff too. So I have a few things I want to chew on here for a second because one thing that I'm just moving this out of the way. Um, when you were talking about the problem solving thing, because I have heard a lot of men complain about this, and I think I've even saw a commercial or two, if I'm not mistaken, about um, a woman coming to a man and she's all upset and she just wants, to basically get her emotions out, and then he starts trying to solve it, and she can look overlooked, in her trying to express herself by him quickly jumping to like, well, how do we solve this? And I think I've never heard it explained the way you did just a few minutes ago, which is why I said I'm here to learn too. Is that the man actually helping you to solve your problem is him? That's how he's loving you, because he sees that you're have an issue. Okay, let's take this issue that you have and fix it. So now you no longer have an issue. And so that's is an expression of love. But the woman is missing it because she's like, well, I'm not looking for a solution right now. I'm looking to be able to express myself. And so I think this
Mm-hmm.
is probably a very, very common thing with men and women. How, I mean, as a matter of fact, my fiance and I just had this discussion the other day. And so, what do, how do you as a man, like, I mean, I will say men are more logical, and of course women kind of gravitate, but I kind of consider myself a little bit more logical, but because I'm looking for the solution to the problem, like I want the
Yeah.
problem to be fixed. But at the same time, I do understand that there are times when there's not necessarily a solution. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, well, I don't want to get into examples because then I'll start going off and trying to think of different stuff. But some things don't necessarily have a solution. So, for example, if you've had a bad day or something very quickly, and you just want to talk about you having a bad day, that's not necessarily something that needs to be fixed. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what do you, as far as a man, I guess, would suggest in that miscommunication as far as men coming to try to solve the problem and women just wanting to express their feelings about what's going on?
Mm-hmm. I think first there has to be a understanding and some communication about what the expectation is about what we're doing, right?
Okay.
So if you're coming in from work, I've had to learn this, right? And I think there's no shame in understanding that none of us, well, not I'm not gonna say none of us, but there's a good portion of us that have not been raised in a household where communicate healthy communication was displayed.
Mm,
And so, with that being said, then we take those examples or the lack thereof into the world, and that's how we operate, and that's the lens in which we see things. So,
mm,
if every time that my mom came home and tried to vent to my dad, he saw it as nagging, then he would leave. Then I would look at that through the lens of, well, that's when people come and talk to me, that's what I should avoid. So I should
mm,
just avoid it altogether. So
mm.
then I would see her coming to communicate needs to me as a negative,
Right,
right?
right.
And so that's the lens in which I would see things. Um, but going back to my point, there has to be a understanding of what the expectation is with the communication. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, learning to say, I had to learn to say, hey, baby, before you start this, let me get an understanding. Do you just want me to hear what you're saying? Or do you really want do you are we problem solving right now?
Right,
Are
right,
you
right.
looking for a solution to this? And so when she say, oh, I just want to vent. So then I have a different ear on, right?
Right.
My mind is not processing about what you said about happened at work. I'm just
Mm,
kind of listening to you and allowing you to process your emotions, and that way, when you're done, you feel better. And I am
mm.
not coming with six steps to to have a healthy wife, right?
Right, right,
And so
right.
we have to get that understanding and have that and get that new language in saying, hey, baby, what is it that you need from me right now? And
Yeah.
because
Wow.
most of us haven't heard that before,
Mm,
then we don't know how to say that.
mm. Yeah, I think that's good because I think sometimes, and just is just from me kind of thinking about some observations that I've made over the years, I have seen some men think that it is weakness to ask questions like that. Like, what is it that you need? And then try to, check whatever box they say. They kind of feel
Mm-hmm.
like in order to be a man, they have to take charge and kind of dominate the direction of conversation. And it's like, well, I'm fixing it, and that's what I'm supposed to do as a man. And so if you're here to vent, that's not what I'm for. I'm here to fix, but so just a whole different mentality when it comes to addressing that. And so I like that you said to be willing to, you can still problem solve. Like you don't have to throw away. Like
Yeah.
if you want to see that as being a man to you, and you don't have to throw that away completely. You just have to make room for, the other person's needs at the time too. So I think asking, I think that's really good to just ask, hey, what do
Yeah.
you need right now? That leaves room for her to, have her
Hmm.
space in there. And that also leaves room for, okay, this is a time where um are we going to problem solve? And so I do like that. And I also think, and this is just my own opinion, I think sometimes it adds a lot of pressure to men sometimes to think that every single thing you complain about, that they have to find a solution for it. Because I've
Yeah.
also seen men that kind of get weighed down with thinking that they have to fix everything for you or fix every problem for you. And I've had to tell, other men, I don't need you to fix stuff for me all the time. Like I understand you're my man and I like that
Hmm.
in you, but it is not always your burden to fix every little bitty thing that's going on with me. So just being able to come in and say, okay, I don't need to fix anything. Let me just listen. I kind of
Yeah.
imagine that it will be a little bit of a weight off of the man if I'm understanding you right, that no, this is not something that I need to solve. Do you think that might be the case or am I reaching?
No, no. I think you touched on a lot of good points. I want to touch on something though, because I feel like this get thrown up in there a lot.
Hmm.
This rhetoric that I don't need you, I'm an independent woman type of thing, is that's a lot of that rhetoric going
Yeah.
on right now. And what
Hmm.
it does is it causes us men to feel some type of way because we want to be needed. We have
Right.
been taught. We have been taught that we need to be needed. We have
Mm,
been taught to lead. We have been taught to operate in those type of spaces. So then you come along and say you don't need me, but you want to
yeah.
be in a relationship with me. It seems very confusing to a man, right?
Mm,
Especially if
mm,
we have been indoctrinated and taught from a very long time that you have position and you're supposed to be doing X, Y, Z. You have
mm,
that your value is tied to performance. But then someone tells me that you no longer need me to perform.
yeah. Yeah. What do you
That,
do
that,
with
that
that?
that's very confusing. But I wanted to throw this out there because men are often taught from a very young age, right? That showing up emotionally, verbally is unmanly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not all
Mm,
men, but there are some men that have been taught by very traditional minded people that showing emotion is unmanly. So by default, they default to like tangible deeds. So like they convey care and affection. So that's not their primary language, right?
mm,
They
mm,
com- they default back to doing things because that's how they feel like love is accepted and seen,
mm.
right? So I wanted to throw that out there. I know you
Can I
asked a
ask you
question.
about some? Can I ask you about something you said right there, real quick, and I'll get
Yeah.
back. You said that they don't emotion. It seems like you connected it somehow with verbal communication. Do you think that because you said some men think it's weakness to show up emotionally, and then you kind of threw verbally in there a little bit. So do you think that those are connected? That if a man does is not comfortable expressing his emotion, or because I always say if a man is not comfortable expressing his emotion, he's not going to be comfortable with you expressing your emotions to him because he doesn't know what to do with them. Do you
Hmm.
think verbal communication automatically goes hand in hand with that?
So let me make the distinction.
Okay.
You can be emotionally connected to a person and not verbally be skilled enough to verbalize what you're experiencing emotionally.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they're not always connected. And what you find is, there's a very traditional men don't really look at that emotional part of things because the majority of us have been taught that to emotionally suppress things is strength.
Okay.
So if I'm showing a whole bunch of vulnerability, that's a sign of weakness,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so now the these new era men like me, like my grandfather, my great grandfather, and all of them, they didn't have access to a lot of the information that we have now, right?
Mm, mm,
So now, although we still have some traditional traits that are being spoken and showed, now we have new information that we have to utilize and then come as a more evolved version of ourselves. Does that
mm.
make sense?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So learning how to communicate, knowing that communication is important, knowing how to be emotionally available to myself first,
Exactly.
and then to my spouse, being able to check on myself. How am I feeling right now? How did
Mm-hmm.
what they say make me feel? And
Mm-hmm.
before, those things were, they were shunned. And if you were talking and acting like that, then you were all type of exploits and negatives.
Mm-hmm.
um, but there's a new day coming, and I think we have to, as first, as a man, I have to hold other men accountable,
Mm-hmm.
because that is mental health. That is part of a stigma of causing other men to emotionally suppress things. Because
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing: just because you suppress it doesn't mean that it dissolves or it goes away.
Exactly. Mm.
It's
It's still
and the
there.
example, yeah. And so the example I use is like a beach ball. You can push the beach ball below the surface as much as you want to, but as soon as you let that thing go, it's going to pop up somewhere else, right? And it
Mm.
never pops up in the same space. It
Exactly.
pops up somewhere else, like way over
Yeah.
there. So
Mm-hmm.
what's happening is we've been suppressing emotions for so long. Now it's popping up at our job.
Yeah.
Now it's popping up in our relationship. It's popping up at church.
Mm.
And because we don't have the tools to be able to reel that back in and process those unprocessed emotions and things, now we just look like an angry black man,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because even when it pops up, it's not a neat little cute pop up. It doesn't go boop. It's like
mhm,
boom. It's
yeah,
like I want to get out of here. Yeah. So yeah.
yeah,
But anyway,
and
I go ahead.
and because it pops up two different ways. Either
Mm.
it implodes and it shows up in your health,
Oh.
high temperature, because stress and trauma, that stuff shows up in your body. It's stored in your
Mm-hmm.
body, so it
Mm-hmm.
shows up in your health,
Mm.
uh, which is why a lot of traditional men, we checking out of here, checking out of here, because one, we don't check on our health the way we're supposed to, and a lot
Mm.
of that stress stuff sits and deteriorates our bodies, and then
Yeah.
or we explode, punching
Mm.
holes in the wall, throwing
Mm.
things, yelling, being verbally, physically abusive. That's
Mm.
another external way of that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mm. Wow.
but yeah, going back
Yeah.
to what I was saying, culturally conditioning men and masculine norms have been an issue in the past.
Mm.
Men telling your son, real men don't cry. You don't cry. Emotions make you soft.
Mm.
And you think about in that era that they were raised in, that made a little bit more sense when you look
It
at the
did.
context.
Mm.
When you're thinking about civil rights and getting beat
Mm.
across the head and oppression and racism, you didn't really have time to sit around and talk about your feelings,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
now we have more tools and information, and now we have to be able to have conversations about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One thing that you said that I do want to respond to when you talked about women acting like they don't need a man, because I do see that as well. And to me, it's a trauma response. Like you think you're being independent and you're strong or whatever, but it's
Mm-hmm.
actually the only women that ever say things like that is the ones who have been hurt and disappointed depending on men before. And so now this is a trauma response to that experience, and now you're carrying that into your relationship in the under the guise of independence, and really there's a lot more stuff going on down there. But I wanted to kind of expound upon that and say that I think need, because you said a man wants to be needed, I think we all want to be needed, and I think need is a healthy, normal, godly part of a relationship, because every like we wouldn't reconnect with God if we didn't need him for anything. Like if he just made
Mm-hmm.
us completely self-sufficient and we didn't need him for anything, most people wouldn't pay any attention to God, you know. So, but
Mm-hmm.
we get to the end of ourselves, and now we know we need something more than what we can do, and then that's usually what tends to lead people back to spirituality and God and things like that. And I mean, look at relationships with babies. Babies, they need you. Toddlers, they need you. Teenagers, they need you. You have in the animal kingdom, when they have their babies, they need them. So to need another person is the basis for how you develop relationships with people. Because when people take the time and the energy and effort to meet a need for you, it helps the guys solidify and grow your bond. And so if you are the type of woman, and I guess I'm talking to women here, and you feel like you don't need a man, that is very, very unhealthy, because you might not need a man for all the things you think you need a man for, but need is a normal part of a healthy relationship. And if you were with somebody who felt like they didn't need you for anything, you will see that it will make it very difficult for you guys to have those experiences and create those that bond, deepen the bond that you have together. If we both don't need each other for anything, so I just wanted to point that out. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. You talking real good right now. Autonomy is something that's being taught. You talked about, a protective factor, right? Women are saying that, but it's kind of like a battle cry, right?
Yeah. Mm,
Because they get locked into spaces where they've had to protect themselves from abusive, verbally abusive, physically abusive men. And that's
mm,
not all of us, but the problem is that when you experience that, then you get locked, and you haven't addressed that through
mm,
therapy or whatever, and you haven't processed that, dealt with that in such a way that now you're locked into that lens of seeing
mm,
everything through that lens. Now
mm.
all men ain't shit,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
You have that mentality. And so even if you have wisdom and you're teaching younger women or men or men teaching younger men, you're speaking from a place of bitterness.
Mm,
And so even though your wisdom came, you're also tainting that with your experience in the lens in which you're seeing.
yeah.
So, going back to that, love isn't weakness. It's
Mm,
courage.
mm,
It's courage. Because it takes strength to be emotionally present, right?
mm,
It
mm,
takes resilience to stay open after a heartbreak,
mm,
which is why, if in telling people, once you have a breakup or something, and you've been with that person for a significant amount of time, you have to process the stuff that you went through. You have to process that, and you do go through kind of a grieving process,
yes, you do.
right?
Mm,
And so here's what happens if you're unhealed and you get into a relationship is you start looking for the things that you lack in that person.
mm,
And so now you're trying to bond with this person, and you do trauma bond with this person over the things that they're doing that you lack.
mm,
And then what happens is most times when these people get into some type of therapy or something and they start healing, now you start seeing all the red flags and the things that you were enjoying before that you got comfortable with, but
mm.
that no longer serve you. And so now there's conflict in the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of unhealed, I mean, stuff that has been just considered normal, and people think that they're being strong and everything. And it's actually just you need to heal as a person. And so you're never going to be able to have a healthy relationship. And I always say unhealthy people cannot have healthy relationships. It does not matter how much you try, how much you want to, how much you pray about it. If you're not healthy, you're not going to have a healthy relationship. So, but yeah,
Fact.
so now let's so you talked about men wanting to problem solve, and that being a sign of love. And then women maybe not sometimes seeing that because they want to express their emotions instead. And I think you gave a great solution to that, which is just to ask, and so you kind of know which way to go. And again, on the opposite end, women can do the same thing. Make sure you ask, because I do think that sometimes, because women are more intuitive, they have a tendency to just go with what they have picked up on, and that's great. But sometimes
Mm.
still need to ask too, because all men are not the same and stuff. One man might want something different from another, or your son or your brother. So it would do you good to ask as well, like, hey, what do you need in this moment? Because sometimes men just, I've seen women, which I think is kind of ironic, they complain about men not being soft and not being loving, but then when men express that, they call them punks and say that they're weak. So
Hey,
so
you talking right there.
yeah.
I could, man.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen it many times, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, make up your mind. What do you want?
yeah.
But if a man is coming to you and he's in that soft, vulnerable moment, you can even ask him, well, what do you need right now? And not always push him into that stereotype that he's not supposed to express his feelings as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there has to be some better teaching that's going on, and I think we have to seek it if you don't have it. You have to start having conversations around people who have healthy relationships and
Yes.
stop listening to TikTok and all these other platforms, which are people just seeking a certain brand and a certain fan base by
Mm,
spouting certain things, but they're
mm,
not living those.
yeah.
And so we have to have better, healthier conversations about what does relationships look like, and it has to start from a healed place. So, for my people who are listening, um, there's still some stigma there, and sometimes we can be guilty of reinforcing that stigma.
Absolutely.
65% of Black folks still believe that mental health is a weakness, and
Mm,
so when you have those type of numbers, even subconsciously, you might be guilty of saying some things like, "Oh, that's weak, man. You just need to go do some
mm,
push-ups," or
mm,
and
mm,
that and it really does cause some damage for people who are trying to be vulnerable. Because I think there's more people now that are actually seeking some type of understanding of mental
mm,
health
mm,
and want to be vulnerable. So what I would say was to the women that are in relationships with some of these men, excuse me, if they reach out to you and decide to be vulnerable and you don't know how to process with that, there's nothing wrong with saying that you don't know how to process that with them,
mm,
and then
mm.
want to learn that.
Exactly.
That does more than you saying something negative while
Mm,
they're vulnerable, because then we shut down.
exactly.
And many men cope with feeling unloved by emotionally by withdrawing emotionally, right?
Mm,
So essentially checking out, disassociating. So I can be here in the room with you talking and not be here in the room with you.
mm, mm,
So a
mm,
lot of women have are talking to bodies of men who have disassociated, have checked out because the
mm.
communication is just not there. And when I
Yeah.
did want to share and talk to you, you call me soft.
Mm, mm.
You want a strong man. You want a strong
Right.
man. You know, my last man didn't act like that and all this toxic rhetoric, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. I mean, I'm glad you pointed that out too. That one of the ways that men respond to not being loved or feeling love is to shut down because I do think a lot of times women some of their frustration in relationships come from a man who has shut down and they don't recognize that he has shut down. Now that can be because of you, that could be because of something else in his past or anything like that. But it's still I think it's good to know that so that you will understand, have some basis on what directions to go in. But yeah, men shutting down, I have seen it, I have witnessed it, I have experienced it. It's a very, very common thing for men who don't yeah, who need some help, mental health, some help when it comes to their mental health. So yeah.
Yeah. And if I'm honest, I was there too at one place.
Mm,
And the thing about it is, I can say that because I've learned to evolve and I've learned to speak my needs. And are if we want the younger people to be able to evolve into healthy beings, then we have to have what's called safe spaces
mm,
where they can come have conversations and divulge and be vulnerable about the things that they don't know, instead of being told, you just need to go figure it out, or you
mm.
need to go listen to this. And so
Go
you
suck
have a
it
lot
up.
of young, yeah, or you have a
Mm,
lot of people that are going to TikToks and these different places trying to get information, instead of going to having a professional help them kind of look at their life and their childhood and their
mm.
attachment style and the different things that make us up.
Yeah. So I have a question with all of that you've talked about because you talked about in the beginning that men are more logical and women are more emotional. Not this is not 100% on both sides. I've met some very emotional men, I've met some very logical women, but typically this is kind of what you get. Do you think that men have a harder time processing their emotions because they're more logical? Does that question make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I would just say this: if the environment is conducive to them processing their emotions, then they're more like they'll process their emotions. But
Okay.
what you find is there are not very many spaces for black men to be able to have these conversations and not come away feeling wounded, more wounded than I was when I initially came to you with my issue, right?
Mm,
And so, like you said, there's both men and women that might have a lot of masculine traits or feminine traits, because or feminine energy, because I mean you're raised. Let's look back at our childhoods. How are
mm,
you raised? What did
mm,
you see? How were you spoken to? Were you
mm,
loved? Were you rejected? Were you
mm,
dismissed? And those things carry into your adulthood when those things aren't healed, right?
mm,
And
mm,
so you might have a weird attachment because your parents didn't love you the way
mm,
um, that you thought they should. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? So there's a lot of different variables that make us who we are, which is the beautiful thing about once you start getting some therapy, once you start figuring out what your strengths are and the stuff that makes you up, then you can understand what's not for you and what doesn't serve you.
exactly. And pick better people to bring into your life instead of
Yeah.
picking people out of your trauma. And then when they hurt you, now your trauma is deepened. And yeah, so Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think you attract people to where you're at,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and so if you have some people, if you have a lot of potholes in your life and you're constantly seeking affirmation, of course somebody's going to fall right in and
Mhm.
be everything that you think that they are, because you have put them on this pedestal and you're seeing them through a lens of lack.
Yep, absolutely. And so one thing that I want to point out in the actual question, I'll try to wrap up here, is that I like when I mentioned men are more logical and women are more emotional, and you said that in the beginning, but I do think that one thing that's missed, and I think this is a lot when it comes to a spirituality where God creating men and women to be partners to one another, is that we
Yeah,
are supposed to learn from each other. So it is not a matter of men being 100% logical and staying 100% logical, and they're always supposed to be logical all the time, or then women being all emotional all the time. So by us coming together, we're supposed to teach each other how to be a little bit more balanced when it comes to that. And I think a lot of times, especially if you have mentalities like, I don't need a man and stuff like that, you don't understand the value that that man brings into your life to help you balance out your more emotional state with a little bit more logic, and then vice versa when it comes to the man. And so it's not like we just stay there. The point of relationships, in my opinion, is to grow from them, and you grow when you learn. And so when you're around somebody who's different from you, then they can teach you those parts of yourself that you not necessarily naturally gravitate towards. And so, so I just wanted to emphasize that we are supposed to learn from each other in those
absolutely.
capacities. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, leadership,
yeah,
right? You
yeah,
know, a lot of people like to take scripture and twist it,
absolutely.
but I can be the head, but I still need that neck. The head
Yeah,
doesn't turn without the neck.
yeah,
Um, and how could two walk together except for they be in agreement? So
exactly.
how do you? That's talking about communication right there. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? You have to be able to have conversations about what you're lacking. But again, going into that space where you guys have set up some safe spaces to be able to be vulnerable with each other. And
Hmm.
then in those spaces is where you learn to bond. And that's how you learned how to have conversations about your needs and what your expectations is, because they change at different ages.
They
I don't
do.
need the same thing I was when I was in my 20s.
Exactly, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's
I
so
mean,
much.
I know. I got so much in my head. Like I was about to say, I would like for you to come back for us to do a top, just talk about expectations, because that is huge when it
It
comes to
is.
relationships. And so, but we can talk about that, after this. The question that I wanted to ask you and try to go ahead and wrap up, because again, this could go on and on. Yeah, is, and I don't want to sound stereotypical, but I'm asking because I want to know. So excuse me if it sounds like a stupid question. It seems like when men get hurt, it takes longer for them to recover from it. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's just me seeing from my female eyes or if that's an actual thing when it comes to men, but I've seen men carry a lot of, like, they can get hurt by like one or two women, and they're very quickly to now say that all women are bad. And it seems like, especially if they get cheated on or something like that, it just seems to me that it takes them a really long time to recover from that. And I'm not sure if that's me or not. So what do you think about that? Am I seeing something, even if it's not exactly what I think it is, or what's your take on that?
I think you're absolutely right. I think for men, we love really hard. If we actually really love you, we will run through walls
Mm,
for you. The problem is if I'm dealing with someone who's not compatible and someone that's not healed, that doesn't love me in a way that allows me and my needs to be met, and then they hurt me, then it's hard to kind of come back from some of that for some men, because
mm,
a man that's fully dedicated that's fully loyal will be vulnerable,
mm,
right? And so
mm,
here I am, I'm fighting against something that I was told from the very beginning that I should be stoic and
mm,
mostly suppress all these things. And I gave you that piece of me, and you stepped on it,
mm,
right? And then
mm,
I actually came, and most times we don't heal very well because it requires us to go to some therapy or do
mm,
some things that also we're told is weak.
mm.
So then we take those that broken pieces, and then we go into another relationship, and we're not even 100% from that last one. We're
Right,
coming in
exactly.
70,
Mm,
65
mm,
into this next relationship, and she does something similar, because we haven't healed and learned how to recognize certain red flags, so we attract certain people from the place where we're at, right? So now
Mm,
I come in with this 65%, and she does something similar, and now I'm at 35%, and women ain't ish, and now I take this dog mentality on because I haven't quite healed,
yeah, yeah. And I
right?
mean, it actually it seems like you said very logical. Like if I've been told that I'm not supposed to do this, I meet a woman, I do all the things that it seems like I'm not supposed to be doing. I'm taking that risk. I get hurt really bad. The 1 + 1 + 1 is don't do that again. Like don't put yourself out there like that again. You're gonna get hurt again. So logically, it makes a lot of sense to me that you would come to that conclusion if that's been your kind of train of thought. And so but like you said, and I'm glad you pointed out that the answer to that is not to, you know, like you said, women ain't ish or whatever, is to actually heal from it. And I always tell people when you heal, you can choose from a better pool. It's never a matter of all men are bad or all women are bad. It's like, which ones are you choosing? And if you
Yeah,
did not have the toolkit to choose correctly, once you heal, it will add more to your toolkit. So now you can kind of scan men a little bit better or women a little bit better and choose differently. And that's kind of
yeah.
how I approach that. But yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. I think it's really both ways because it's a
It
standard
is.
that you have to
Mm,
get to. And how can you love somebody else until you learn how to love yourself, right?
exactly. Yeah.
And so if you don't love yourself, then you go into other relationships expecting them to be what you're not.
Mm,
And if we go a little bit deeper, most of this stuff comes from an attachment style or some type of childhood
mm,
raising that was
mm,
ineffective or unhealthy. And so
mm.
you already come out the gate with disillusion about what a relationship is supposed to be like.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, man, you get me excited. I get
I know.
man.
I mean, my man is going here, man. I'll admit it. Like, oh, we could go into this, we go into this, we go into this, but it's like, up, it's almost time to go. So, but yeah, so I really enjoyed this conversation today. I hope we can do it again. So much to
Mhm.
learn. So even for me, just thinking about my own experiences when it comes to men, because I do want to be more mindful of not just seeing everything from my female lens, but I always tell people you have to make space for the other person to be in your life. And yes, I'm a female. Yes, my mind is going to gravitate in a different way, but I want to be open to, okay, how do you see things, or how what do you need, or what do you like, so that I can make sure that I'm, we're growing together and not me just staying in my little corner about what I think and stuff like that, because that's really not how you grow as a person. So, but very, very good conversation. Thank you for coming on. But before we wrap up, is there one key point that you would like to make, maybe to tell men or women when it comes to expressing love in relationships?
Oh, there's multiple points I would love to make. I'm gonna have to save it for next time. But what I will say is this: work on yourself. Put yourself as a priority. Take care of your mental health. There's so too many of us that are walking around here broken pieces, and we're expecting other people to be what we're not to ourselves. You
Exactly.
have to heal internally and come to a place of standard before you start picking people of substance. You
Mm,
have to rise to the occasion for yourself. You have to
yeah,
be your best cheerleader. You have to love yourself. You have to take care of yourself so
mm,
that you know how you want to be loved. And if
exactly.
you don't, and in the process of learning how to love yourself, then you form what who a healthy identity, and that's really what you need is a healthy identity, because a person that loves themselves doesn't allow everybody else to come in and step on them, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so
Amen.
stop discounting yourself for people who don't see the value in you,
Mm,
but you have to
mm,
see the value in yourself. And if you're a child of God, then He's already told you who you are. You need to go back and read the manual. And so,
exactly. And don't forget to mention your group that you have.
oh, absolutely. I'm
Mm,
also a founder of the Black Man's Locker. You can find us on multiple different platforms, one of the largest ones being on Facebook. We have close to 15,000 uh, black men around the world and growing. We have two different groups. We have a surface level where women can come and have conversations with men on the surface level. And we start try to do a little bit more engaging in that. And then we have an internal group that's just all black men, so you can reach out the Black Men's Locker, and you're gonna have to answer some questions to get in there. We're not just accepting anybody, and if you come in with that toxic stuff, you'll find your way out because this is a space where we work on ourselves. We talk about mental health. We are supportive to each other. We're trying to become better men, fathers, co-workers,
Mm,
leaders for our communities, and we
mm.
don't have time for the other stuff, right?
Exactly. I like that. I like that. Well, thank you so much. And make sure everybody you tune in next week on Thursday at 12 p.m. for another episode of Real Talk About Life and Relationships. Be sure to send your questions my way. And even if you have questions for Terry, you can send them to me. I will make sure he gets them. But thank you so much for tuning in, and you be blessed and have a great week. Bye.
Yeah.